Hello there. Good evening. My name's Andrew. I've been asked to do a presentation today on the Unit 8 of the assignment on the Access course, and that's the roles and responsibilities of the registered nurse. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is the changes to the role of the nurse, the impact that it's had on the nurse. We're also going to look at the discuss and analyse the NMC and the NMC code. We're also going to then look at the importance and the importance of communication and evaluate at the end the multidisciplinary team approach. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to start with the recent impact and the recent changes to the role of the nurse. So generally the nursing role has changed. So in the early 90s, the Project 2000 was introduced more training of nurses out of hospitals and into universities. So instead of the old apprenticeships where nurses were trained on the ward, trained on the job, this Project 2000 brought in that student nurses, up and coming student nurses were trained in universities. The nurses then were trained at university and degree level. Okay, so this changed the way in studying in university. So it changed to a degree, to diploma. Started off as a diploma, but nowadays all students, including myself, that will be going into nursing will be doing the degree level course. So that we can ask, well, what was the Project 2000 designed for? So it was designed to reflect the advance in medical technology and clinical care and setting, and getting more as clinical services were getting more advanced and more sophisticated. So student nurses are still based on the ward, but student nurses now have a ward-based mentor who's a preceptor, and they support the student nurse through their journey on that placement on the ward. So also look into what different routes there are into nursing. There's various routes. We've got from the Access course you can go on to the nursing degree course. There is other routes that you can go into. You can go to children's nursing, mental health, midwifery, learning disabilities. So there's a wide spectrum of nursing specialities that you can go into. There are also different pathways. I know Chester University do the 4-year course to be dual trained and come out with a 4-year course and then come out with a master's degree. So that'll give you a bit more education, more autonomy. There is the 2-year nursing practitioner course. It's a bit equivalent to the old SEN training. So that role lasts for 2 years, and progression includes work. So once you've progressed into nursing, the nursing doesn't stop there. You can include up to work to matron level and a senior nurse. Senior clinical nurse specialists, they can also become eye injectors for patients with macular degeneration. And they work more autonomously. So these nurses are specialists, but they work alongside the doctor, the consultant, and they work independently with the patients with various specialities such as oncology, rheumatology, ophthalmology, trauma orthopedics. There's a wide spectrum of different nurses. So as I've just said, the nurse training doesn't stop there. You can go on to do your master's degree at the end, if you so wish, and again that gives you that more scope to go on to higher pay bands, higher posts such as clinical nurse specialists, consultants, working alongside the consultants, doing more of a doctor's role really, and that's the shape of how nursing has become. It's become more of a doctor's role. So the responsibility of the nurse has changed. So the nurses have more duties to perform, such as care plan documentation, performing more doctor's duties. So examples are cannulation, blood tests, etc. So the impact on this, it can relate to more time management skill for the nursing staff as dealing with sick patients. Nurses always must rely on other members of the multidisciplinary team. Another impact is the ageing population that we've got. People are living a lot longer, and of course there's an increase on demand on the NHS, so we have a lot more patients living longer. That's due to the more advanced medication and technology. People are actually actively living longer. So to summarise, the impact of the change is the shift in technology. We've got more advanced technology and role in advanced nursing, advanced leading into more responsibilities as a registered nurse. So there's more litigation. Nurses must adhere to such as accurate documentation. And this then leads me on to the role of the NMC. So what does the NMC stand for? So the NMC is the Nursing Midwifery Council. So the NMC replaced the UKCC in 2001. So the NMC is a regulatory body that regulates nursing, staff, trained nurses, nursing associates, practitioners, midwives and health visitors. To regulate well, the NMC supports professions and the public by creating resources and guidance. This serves nurses' careers and to support the delivery of high standards of care and addresses new challenges. The NMC supports individuals involved in investigations and complaints and increasing their visibility to feel engaged and empowered. This helps to influence health and social care and improve the general care that we provide. They share intelligence with regulatory bodies and work in partnership with each other. All the secondary legislation is created under the Health Act 1999, which forms the network of how the NMC operates. So the NMC sets out standards that ensure quality assured education and investigation of complaints. All nurses must work within limitations of the scope of practice. They must also perform tasks that don't pose a risk of harm. The professional duty of candour is the responsibility of all healthcare professionals to be open and honest when things go wrong, which could bring harm to the patient. This includes informing family or friends or patients' advocates, apologising and offering a remedy and explaining to the patient's advocate or family when things have gone wrong. All nurses need to be open and honest with other members of the staff. The NMC acts as a support in legislation. It investigates poor practice, so it investigates any condition where patients, there's investigation of misharm or misconduct. The NMC can take staff nurse or any associated nurse who was on the register to the disciplinary panel, and the impact on the nurse is it can result in striking off order. And that's a result of not adhering to the NMC code. In April 2016, revalidation was introduced for all nurses. So all nurses on the NMC register need to take place every 3 years and confirms nurses fit to practice. The nurses need to complete at least 450 practice hours relevant scope of practice. 35 hours continuing professional development and 5 pieces of reflected feedback from other members of staff or something that's they've done well for this patient or they've gone above and beyond. This is done with an NMC registrant, normally the nursing line manager, and confirms the health and the character of that registered nurse and their fitness to practice. CPD is continuing professional development, or known as an appraisal. It can include attending conference, it can attend workshops, study days, and a relevant training course relevant to the course. So what the NMC does, it governs by law. It's governed nurses by law, so they have to adhere to the policies. Nurses all need to adhere to local policies within the workplace or the health and social care. And that includes everyone working in the community, nurses, school nursing, district nursing, practice nursing and prison work. So we're going to move on now to summarise now. We're going to move on to the NMC code. So what the NMC code sets out 4 core principles that all registered nurses on the register must adhere to. So the first one is prioritise patients. Nurses must maintain patients' human rights at all times and ensure basic care needs are met. Patients are hydrated and maintained with the right balance of nutrition. It's also important that patients or service users have the access to hygiene facilities, continence needs are met. Nutritional risk assessments are maintained. Patients need to be treated with sensitivity and compassion. How does this impact on the nurse? Okay, so it impacts the nurse that need to be non-judgmental. Every nurse within any nurse in any profession in the care setting should be non-judgmental and non-discriminatory, especially in prison work. You know, if you've got a prisoner on the ward or prisoner in the hospital setting, you can't judge that patient unless you know that patient personally. But no, you can't. You have to be non-judgmental and treat that patient like you treat every other patient. While the nurse needs to make sure that all documentation is accurate and legible and recorded and documented in a timely manner. So the second one is promote safety and effectiveness. So the nurse must research based evidence. It's key that all nurses must promote and engage good communication skills to be able to communicate with a diverse range of people within the NDT. The nurse must act as an advocate if the patient is unable to speak English and arrange a suitable interpreter. Nurses should only work within the competence and scope of practice and limitations and support junior staff in nursing practice. The impact on this is nurse must work within their level of training and competence. The nurse must refer problems to senior staff and maintain clear, legible documentation. Number 3 is preserving safety. So nurses must always be accountable for their own actions and that can impact on patient care. Example: patient has cataract surgery. Nurse advises patient not to drive for a week. That needs to be documented. That talk has taken place. Needs to be documented accurately and timely. Nurse must always take reasonable steps to protect from volatile and aggressive situations. Nurse must make sure they take steps to protect fellow members of the MDT. Bear in mind they've got PIN numbers as well, and and the well-being of the staff. The nurses are legally accountable for the safe storage of medicines, so all medicines need to be stored in the correct manner in accordance with the local policy as well, pharmaceutical policy, and also ensure the correct administration at all times. This guidance protects patients from harm. And the fourth one is the promotion of professional behaviour. The behaviour of the nurse is fundamental due to vulnerability of the patients and complexity of the patient needs. The nurse is expected to act as role models and advocates and expected to communicate with clear and concise information at all times. They must always ensure every nursing profession mandatory training is up to date and any training skills are recorded. Appraisals need to be done, it's up to the nurse to maintain the regular 12-monthly appraisal, and the nurse generally must uphold the reputation of the nursing profession. So that just summarises what we've talked about then in the section on the roles of on the NMC code. So I've got a diagram there. So communications within effectiveness and with the MDT. So communication skills are the effective tool that all nurses must have to hold efficient MDT members and work safely and competently. All registered nurses use both verbal and non-verbal communication within the MDT and also special methods. Nurses' documentation, writing in patients' care plans. Nurses need complete water loads, nutritional scoring, manual handling risk assessments, pressure ulcers. So these can impact patients if they're not completed. What they can do is they can create a potential cause of complaint and also criminal proceedings against the nurse, as it puts the patient at risk of harm. If these documents are not completed and not handed over to the MDT and then members of the MDT, those things could get missed as well. Verbal communication includes liaising with members of the multidisciplinary team, so it can include physios, occupational therapists, pharmacists, speech and language therapists, consultants, house officers, and these are all key in providing valuable, safe patient care. So again, it links in with the written communication, because you write things down on paper, you write things down on the patient's notes. So all them are important to facilitate patient discharge from the hospital, and also requires nurses to communicate over the phone and speak about patients' vulnerability and conditions over the phone. So non-verbal communication will include patients with tracheostomies, so it can include writing on a whiteboard to communicate. This then needs to be, documented that these actions have been taken place. So non-verbal, it also can include sign language. Special methods include sign language, but we also have interpreters with a lot of multicultural needs for patients who English is not the first language. Patients with learning disabilities, we have special adjustments where we can spend more time in a quiet space and speaking slowly. Okay, so evaluation of the MDT approach treatment decisions are based on the opinion of more than one person. So the team is engaged in decisions of patient care. Patient advocate means that the nurse can speak up for the patient and act on the patient's best interests. Disadvantages: communication can break down with the MDT, shortage of staff. Patient can be subjected to harm due to breakdown in communication. Clinical audits are effective, and the advantage are improved clinical practice and lessons learned. Disadvantage: the approach is mature, as mature team members can be easily frustrated by the new change and the hierarchical structures in healthcare settings. Teamwork has its advantage that we are all different skills, staff with various levels of qualification and expertise. Staff can share their experiences and pass skills on to the patients and deliver high standards of care. Disadvantages: some staff can be undertrained, mixed skill, unskilled, and have that lack of communication skills, and can cause a problem within the MDT. And it's also, in summary, it's about nurses working together as a multidisciplinary team and working together to achieve the same outcome. Okay, so just to summarise, so the presentation that I've presented has looked at the changing role of the nurse, looked at the NMC register, I've looked at the implications of poor practice, effective communication, and the evaluation of needing for effective communication. Any questions? Okay, thank you for listening in your time. Just to summarise, I put me list of references that I've used for the presentation and bibliography. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope it meets the standards required to pass. Thank you. Oh.